LG has announced the V30, its latest flagship. Top-end everything from Qualcomm's Snapdragon 835, 4GB of RAM, to 64GB of storage and a microSD slot, to an 18:9 6-inch QHD Plus screen. Video capture is its speciality, it seems, with a cine video high-quality log mode with real-time filters. I'll have to try those out. As usual, audio is great for the V-Series with a hi-fi quad DAC and bundled Bang & Olufsen headphones. There's the usual LG wide-angle dual-cam setup with 16 and 13 megapixel resolutions, the former at f/1.6. It arrives with Android 7.1.2, but Android Oreo is coming by the end of the year. The battery is 3300 mAh and should just about cope. Pricing is likely to be around £700, including VAT in the UK, when it arrives at the end of September. Now here's something you don't run into very often these days, a brand new smartphone with decent specs that runs Windows 10 Mobile. You know what Windows Phone turned into, with Microsoft unifying all the form factors in existence into the exact same OS, Windows 10. And I remain an admirer of Microsoft's ambitions here to have a single OS, single interface and app ecosystem that quite literally spans phones, tablets, hybrids, laptops, desktops, games, consoles, VR goggles is impressive, even if the reality isn't quite as seamless as the theory. And one of the discontinuities is that the phone side of things, exemplified here by the Alcatel IDOL 4 Pro, isn't quite keeping up with the Windows 10 cutting edge. The core OS code is the same, though compiled here for ARM chips, of course. The HTML rendering engine is the same. Cortana, all first-party apps, they're all exactly the same as on the desktop. But in the last year, Microsoft has put in a huge push on the desktop side with 3D and stylus functions, and they haven't really had the resources to get all of that compiled for mobile too. Still, an awful lot is the same, with a familiar tile-based start screen, applications like Outlook, Edge, OneNote, Office, Maps, Skype, and so on. Essentially the same UI and code on both phone, here, and desktop, here, the Surface Pro. Is it important that your phone runs the exact same apps as on your other computing devices? Well, it's probably not essential in 2017, as long as the services you're accessing are all compatible, and that's partly why Windows Phone never really took off. But it's still cool, and why I was very sad that Microsoft stopped making the rather excellent Lumia 950 range in mid-2016 as part of their global restructuring. The factories had to go, sadly. But the Alcatel IDOL 4 Pro bucks the trend by being launched in the second half of 2017, running Windows 10 Mobile and doing it rather well. A Snapdragon 820 chipset with 4GB of RAM may sound slightly behind the cutting edge, and it is, but it's still very capable. The IDOL 4 Pro has the almost identical specifications across the board to my trusty ZTE Axon 7 running Android, my main smartphone for quite a while now. And at just over £400 all in the UK, the IDOL 4 Pro comes in at an upper mid-range price, so you really can't complain. Especially as for Windows 10 on phones, it's effectively the only game in town. A 1080p AMOLED screen sounds humdrum, but it's actually rather beautiful. Or perhaps it's that Windows, quite a lot of which can be dark themed, is beautiful on AMOLED. The back is oleophobic glass too, making for a slippery phone despite the solid metal sides, which is why I've been using it in a TPU case most of the time, but then that's par for the course for anything in 2017. Working around the IDOL 4's edges, there's a welcome 3.5mm headphone jack on top, putting out terrific audio. There's power and volume, a dedicated camera launch key and capture button, a quick charge 3, compatible USB Type-C port, all very welcome. The star hardware feature, though, is the pair of JBL branded stereo front-mounted speakers. We've seen these before in at least one Android-powered IDOL device, but they impress even more here, given that the Windows world is very poorly served in the phone speaker department. Here's a demonstration. That's pretty good for outdoors, and I really don't want to disturb the neighbours. Volume and fidelity are first class, and these are the best speakers of any current smartphone, bar none, which pleases me greatly. Around the back is a 21 megapixel 1/2.4 inch censored f/2.2 camera that's perfectly fine for most use cases, and I've taken some great shots. It's not flagship level though, and the biggest weakness is the lack of OIS, making for poor low light handheld shots, and meaning that the digital stabilization has to work overtime when shooting video. So I'm holding this handheld, obviously. This is 1080p footage, mainly because that's what I use in other fields. I don't want to go all 4K. I don't think the sensor is really up to it, and you do get the digital stabilization. This is looking quite shaky on the viewfinder, but I'm pretty confident this will be digitally stabilized here in weak summer sun. The microphones do allow though for accurate stereo capture at high gig volumes though, as you'd expect from a phone in the same ecosystem as the best Lumias. There's a fast fingerprint sensor here too, another first for the ecosystem unless you count the enterprise only Elite X3, that's hobbled by the speed of Windows Hello and its accompanying animation. It's a second from touching the sensor to the screen powering on and being ready for use. A second isn't long, but we expect a lot less in 2017 in the iPhone and Android worlds. Plus, there's a bug in the latest Insider's build of the OS where you can't power on using the sensor at all. You have to put the screen on first. Oops. Insider's build? Oh yes, Microsoft and Alcatel still haven't got their act together in terms of sorting out the creators update for this device, or even recovery images if you brick the phone for some reason. So the IDOL 4 Pro has to live on 2016's anniversary update code out of the box, or do what I did and use the Insider's program, which is currently a one-way street. For their next trick, Microsoft and Alcatel are going to organise us up in a brewery. Put it all together and the Alcatel IDOL 4 Pro is almost the last great hope for mankind. Now that's Babylon 5, isn't it? The last great hope for Windows 10 Mobile, except that the relatively unspectacular camera here and the tardy official update support cast shadows on what could be a really rather interesting alternative to the Android mainstream. The latter should be sorted soon, I'm hearing, which is good news, and maybe the camera too can be improved in firmware, Pixel style. But all of this is somewhat moot. You'd buy the IDOL 4 Pro for two reasons. One, those phenomenal stereo speakers. Two, because it exists at all. And in the current Windows 10 mobile world, that's huge. And it's the only game in town.